Hello, this is Braydon Wilkins here on my psychology report on the different responses I got according to differently worded questions. On the more broad question, I asked, what is psychology and what is it about? And almost everybody I reviewed said it was about the human mind and according behavior and other things like that. Just a very basic outline of what it was. A more specific question I asked was, what was it? Do youth today know how to work? And again, this had a more general response, and they said, usually no. Some of them said it depended on who the youth was and where they grew up, which seemed to lead to the nurture side of psychology rather than nature. There was nothing about genetics mentioned. I asked another question, is caffeine good or bad for you? Again, the answers didn't vary that much at all. People said no. Another question I asked is, why does odd behavior increase during the full moon? I did have some variety in this question. I had some people respond by saying, well, it's because there's endorphin release because there's more light rather than an inhibited darkness that causes people to chemically react differently and therefore physically react differently. I had people say, what are you saying? I don't believe that odd behavior increases in the moon, and if it did, I don't know why it would. And a lot of I don't knows. The last question I asked was, what was it? Why do other senses increase when one sense is lost? And I noticed that when I worded the question this way, there was a lot of acceptance to that belief, because it seemed so reasonable. And therefore it was believable, which made it acceptable. And so they responded by saying, to compensate for the other senses, and when asked that, no one really denied it. The last question I asked people was, why do opposites attract? And some people said opposites don't attract. People who stick together attract. Others said it's just the way life is, which made it a genetic response, a nature side rather than a nurture side. And I had a more scientific response stating from some famous quote that if we were to live with ourselves, we would commit suicide, meaning we would kill the other person, and that we would, because some of our own behaviors are abhorrent to others in our sight. So, when asked with a broad question, I usually got a broad response. It varied extremely in words, but the basic layout was the same. When I asked specific questions with no generalization, the response was the same. It was specified, but had no specifics. Did that make sense? It answered the question, but it didn't really get in depth. But when I asked the specific questions that were worded for the audience to accept it, they not only usually accepted the response, but tried to come up with a logical approach to it, because it was a seemingly logical question. So, there you have it. I think I forgot my introduction. I'm Braydon Wilkins. I plan on causing the apocalypse and taking over the world. If I don't succeed, then I guess I won't be as infamous as I had hoped to be. Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.